Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Here we are on a Wednesday, Soccer Morning on WorldSoccerTalk.com. Thank you for being here with us. Hope your Wednesday is going well so far. Your Back to the Future 2 day is going well so far, right? October 21st, 2015, the day that Marty McFly at the end of Back to the Future 2 with Doc Brown and his girlfriend, whatever her name was, get into the DeLorean and fly their way to the future. That's where they go. October 21st, 2015. That's where we are right now, today. We have none of the stuff that they said we would have in Back to the Future 2, and I'm very disappointed. But we do have soccer, and we've got a lot to cover today. We're taking phone calls on a number of topics, whatever they might be, including the Champions League. Let's start there. Champions League results from yesterday. The surprise result of the day, Arsenal holding serve at home, beating Bayern Munich 2-0. Olivier Giroud and Mesut Ozil do the honors for the Gunners. A strong tactical plan from Arsene Wenger gets it done against one of the most unstoppable attacking forces in Europe. Now, you did have Manuel Neuer making an uncharacteristic mistake on Giroud's goal. You may have had a handball on Giroud's goal, but it doesn't matter for Arsenal. They get the 3 points and keep their Champions League hopes alive. Bayer Leverkusen and Roma played to a wild 4-4 draw yesterday. Chicharito Hernandez scored twice for Bayer Leverkusen. And, in fact, Bayer Leverkusen came back from a 2-goal deficit with about 6 minutes left in that match as well. You also had Bate losing to Barcelona 2-0 at home. Neymar sparking the Catalans with Rakitic scoring twice for Barcelona. Dynamo Kiev holding Chelsea 0-0. No goals in that match in Kiev. A lackluster performance from the English champions, to say the least. Valencia 2, Ghent 1, Porto 2, Maccabi Tel Aviv 0, and I believe Zenit St. Petersburg 3 and Lyon 1. Those are your other. Olympiacos beating Dinamo Zagreb in Zagreb. Games today to watch. Certainly the headlining game is PSG and Real Madrid, but you also have CSKA Moscow hosting Manchester United, Juve hosting Mönchengladbach of Germany in a big match in Manchester City versus Sevilla. Stephen Goff of the Washington Post is reporting that the Philadelphia Union are chasing former U.S. international and current AZ Alkmaar director of football Ernie Stewart for their technical director gig. Stewart appeared in 3 World Cups for the United States, 94, 98, and 2002. Collected over 100 caps for the Americans. Didn't finish his career at DC United. Actually went and played a couple of matches in Holland, where he was born, before hanging them up. But he did play for a couple of seasons for DC United in the early part of the 21st century. Goff is also reporting that Freddie Bobic, former director of football at Stuttgart, is also a candidate for that job. So interesting times up in Philadelphia. The FIFA Ethics Committee is expected to reveal new targets of investigation today. That body confirmed that Michel Platini will not be able to stand for FIFA president as long as he is under suspension. Remains to be seen whether that suspension will be extended for Michel Platini. Reforms proposed allow for disclosure of proceedings against officials upon request. This will be a more transparent process. Obviously, a lot of the criticism levied at the Ethics Committee is not only was it a creature of Sepp Blatter, but that it was not transparent in its operations. Orlando City of the MLS has launched, that's not right, Orlando City of MLS has launched an NWSL team, expansion team called the Orlando Pride. They're set to start play next year. Former U.S. women's national team head coach, former Australia national team head coach Tom Sermanni will be the club's first head coach, and the league will conduct an expansion draft on November 2nd to help fill out Orlando's roster. The U.S. U-17s were up 2-0 at halftime yesterday against Croatia at the U-17 World Cup in Chile. I then turned on that game, and then they gave up 2 goals and ended up in a draw, 2-2 with Croatia. So it's totally my fault. I'm taking the blame. There's already a banner. Somebody has put together playing with a banner. Okay, it's an image, but it's on Twitter. Davis out. It's all my fault. The U.S. is now a 1 loss and 1 draw from 2 matches. That means 1 point. They do have a chance to advance. Chile, the hosts in the next round. That's or in the next match. That's on Friday. Chile comes off of an absolute destruction at the hands of Nigeria, 5-1. So the hosts will be licking their wounds as they face the United States at the Estadio Sausalito in Viña del Mar in Chile. Richie Williams obviously leading that team. They are capable of playing some good soccer. They're also capable of doing what they did and capitulating in that second half. Lots of interesting times for young American soccer players. Let's take a break. When we come back, right now we're lining up phone calls. It's all about you on a Wednesday. Back to the Future today. What are you doing with it? Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com.
Face in the crowd, you're talking too loud, but I can't hear you calling.
During the past few months, we've created a new weekend tradition which includes watching your favorite MLS team play on TV, muting the broadcast, heading over to Rabble.tv to hear my audio during the game, and then drinking a cold beverage as we spend 90 minutes together discussing our favorite league. For this Sunday, I'd like to personally invite you to join me and Jared Dubois as we bring you the final day of the MLS regular season. From 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern, Jared and I will be talking through the DC United against Columbus Crew finale, but we'll also be keeping a close eye on all of the other games, where we'll be updating you on the key developments as they happen. With Rabble, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the DC United against Crew game on TV, press the mute button, and head on over to Rabble.tv to listen to me and Jared on your desktop, through your iOS, Android app, or through your mobile browser. Plus, before and during the games, you can join in by posting your questions or observations in the comments section. Well, why don't you create your own broadcast, call one of your team's games? It's easy. Sign up for free today and try it out. Join me and Jared this Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern at Rabble.tv, where it's your team and your call. During the
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
All right, so last-minute change of plans here, which I'm very excited about. We've grabbed our friend Charlie Boehm, to be more proper, from soccerwire.com, ussoccerplayers.com, MLSsoccer.com, a man who probably covers more different, distinct areas of American soccer than anybody I know. Charlie, I think you're that guy.
Ha! Well, thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, you got the MLS gig. You're doing the youth soccer. I mean, developmental stuff. You're doing women's soccer. You got all this stuff covered. Since we're here though, and it is a couple of days away from the final day of the MLS season, we're leading up into Decision Day. #Decision Day. Figured we should talk about that. The setup for this, more than the games themselves, and maybe we'll come to some of the scenarios. What do you make of this move to, they're not putting everybody on at the same time, partly because they have the ability to not do that in some areas. But what do you make of this move to do a decision day? Everybody's playing Eastern Conference at one time, Western Conference at another.
Well, I wasn't involved in the structure or organization of it or anything like that, but I'm a fan just because, one, this is moving a little bit more into line with global practices. I think, I don't know if you could call it a mandate per se, but certainly in most tournament formats, that you want to try and set things up to where no one enters their final match with knowledge that could affect the way they approach the game. But more importantly, I think it just sort of stokes excitement. It creates a little bit of that blitz effect that we see that can have such a powerful effect in other sports. I think a big part of the college basketball March Madness tradition and the fervor that it inspires is having so many games at once, having a little bit of a sensory overload with action playing out in multiple places at the same time, and it just creates a little bit more of a milestone, a little bit of a signpost for people to connect with the last week of the regular season, and then sort of primes a pump for playoffs, which get started not very far after this. Just a few days later, the playoffs get going.
Yeah, the playing games midweek. The one change they set this up again. Eastern Conference games happening all together. Western Conference games happening all together. The one change we've had since that was originally planned is moving the Red Bulls Chicago game from the first window to the second in order to line it up with FC Dallas and San Jose, because it's Red Bulls and FC Dallas going up against one another, and they're both going for the supporter shield. Dax McCarty was on Twitter, saying that we should be doing that, and the league made a decision. This is some flexibility I'm not sure that we've seen before.
Yes, people have talked about flex scheduling for a while now as an area where the NFL uses it, and it gives them a lot of leeway to sort of stoke their ratings and tweak their product and the way their product is received. So not quite at full flex level yet, but I think this is a promising sign for being able to work with television partners to make things as compelling as possible.
Now, when it comes down to the events of Sunday, we don't know quite how they're going to play out. And I was asked this question for ESPN FC, and you know how these things work, Charlie. A bunch of people ask the same question. You're not all going to give the same answer. So my answer maybe wasn't the obvious one. But who has the most to lose on Sunday?
Oh, great question. And I've got to pull out the playoff scenarios here to be sure, but I think you're looking at there's a couple teams that have that are entering with more issues than others. For example, the New England Revolution, they're going to make the playoffs, but they really need they need to stop the bleeding. They lost a really tough match to Montreal at home in front of one of their biggest crowds in years and years. They may rank among one of their biggest crowds ever. So that's a team that, again, I was talking about them as really good candidates to make another run to the MLS Cup final. But right now, it's unclear that they could beat anybody on a given day. So that there are a couple of teams like that are sort of listing a bit here. And then over in the West, the main drama is San Jose and Sporting KC are both scrapping along. They both need points very badly. And again, two teams that are trying to get in, and I think if they get into the playoffs, you could see them making some noise and giving some higher seeds trouble. right now they're duking it out for one of those last places.
I actually have a sort of, again, off the radar pick. There are teams that aren't in the playoffs, haven't locked up their spot, that had the most to lose on decision day, of course. But I think that if you're going to go off of that book, the LA Galaxy have a lot to lose if they don't make sure that they're either starting at home in a playing game, which is not that what they want. They want to finish top. They want to finish second in the West so that they have the bye in the semifinals. They if they have to go on the road, Charlie, is what I'm saying. This could be the year that the LA Galaxy fall flat in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's true. They look more beatable. There's a humanness about them that we're not used to seeing at this time of year. Normally, they've really got things clicking. They, as much as any team, really want to be able to play important games at home because they've looked like of course they got thrashed pretty good by Portland at home last weekend, but their home and away form is dramatically different. So 12-2-3 at home, 2-8-6 away from StubHub Center. The Galaxy can beat anyone in this league soundly when things are working for them. But and right now they've got the 2 spot. But if they drop out of there, if they've got to play an extra round of games, an extra the knockout round game, if they've got to add more miles to the odometer for some of those aging legs, things get a little trickier for them in terms of their title defense.
Let's come to the East. The nationally televised game in the first window in the East is DC United and the Columbus Crew, or Columbus Crew SC. DC. This is where we both are located, probably the team you see most, certainly up close and in person. What do you make of DC United right now?
Yeah, lots to prove for United. Again, this is a team that has done so much with relatively little. The way they've marshaled their resources is fantastic. It's really impressive. Ben Olsen has got a sort of built a culture there that's a sort of a Spartan minimalist culture that has achieved great things given the resources of the teams they're challenging. However, they were the top seed last year, and they look like good value to make a deep run, and they were upset. They had a team, the Red Bulls, knocked them off in the playoffs last year, ending a really, really long streak of dominance in the postseason of DC over New York. So no one's quite sure. I don't think even their fans are quite sure what to expect from United right now. They're still missing Davy Arnaud, one of their sort of midfield linchpins. Marcus Halsti, the Finnish international, a newcomer this year, has stepped into that role. And, they got it done with very little trouble against Chicago. They had a game that turned into a blowout at home last week. They're another team that if they get some numbers out at their stadium, and get off to a good start at home, things start to look good for them. But again, if they drop down out of the top 2 places, the road becomes so much more convoluted, and Crew can leapfrog them with a result this weekend. So and there's actually, you can ask United fans, there's a little bit of a tradition of late season games in Columbus not going well for United. They've seen some seasons hit the rocks actually in Columbus. So we'll see what happens there, but certainly a match that will be interesting to watch, but will be robbed of the presence of Kai Kamara, the co-leading scorer in the league this year because of suspension.
No Federico Higuain either, I believe. I believe both of those guys are on yellow card suspensions for the weekend. That's big damage to Crew SC and a big boost to DC United, despite the lack of Davy Arnaud, as you said. I wanted to I'm trying to where did my thought process go? I just had something in my head and I've seemed to have lost it. Again, we're looking at the final day. Not everybody's got something to play for, of course. This is a situation where there's some dead money in the water. It's that doesn't make it. The analogy makes no sense. But you got
Nathan, I would say there's a game up in Canada. Very interesting game happening between Toronto and Montreal, which is a rivalry that sort of far expands beyond soccer. It's a cultural and political rivalry in many ways, and it's going to manifest itself with TFC versus Impact. This could quite possibly be a situation where TFC deals a really crippling blow to Montreal on the final day of the season. TFC are in for the first time ever to the postseason. Um, Montreal are in as well, but where are they going to wind up?
Yeah.
How many miles are they going to have to travel? What's going to face them? A team that if they can get a result this weekend and enter the playoffs with the momentum they have now, I don't think anybody wants any part of them. New York has been the clear top team in the East this year, but there's not quite the sense of heavyweights at the top like you have in the West. And so the Impact and Toronto, actually conceivably there's scenarios in which they could play each other again in the knockout round of the first round of the playoffs. So it's going to be a fun one to watch. It's going to be a fun one to see if the stars show up. What does Giovinco bring? What does Drogba bring? And there'll be a great number of traveling TFC supporters, I think, at Stade Saputo.
Absolutely. It's a good one to point to. One of the games that really has no bearing on anything. Well, Orlando, I guess, technically is still mathematically alive, but their goal differential against the Revolution is so large, it's almost impossible for them to overcome that. The Revs have a 3-point lead, so conceivably the Revs could lose to NYCFC and still be fine. But Philadelphia, Orlando is, for me, the only thing that is interesting there is that we've got some news out of Philadelphia that they're chasing perhaps Ernie Stewart for their technical director job. Charlie, a guy that's been in DC. Imagine a guy that you've run into more than once. What is that? What kind of fit would he be in a modern MLS context? And could you imagine Ernie Stewart actually considering making the jump back across the Atlantic?
Yeah, this is an interesting development that's come up in the last couple of days here. It's fascinating to me. I did cover Ernie Stewart in his last season of play. As a player, he finished out with a championship with DC United in 2004. Very interesting guy, very cerebral player, and he's obviously turned out to be a highly successful executive over in the Netherlands. I'm skeptical of this. I think it's going to take a really, really effective pitch and maybe a sweet paycheck for Philly to lure him away, because this is someone, as a dual national, he's fully had his feet in both worlds. But I think he's someone who appreciates an immersive soccer culture. I think he's built really great things and developed and sold a lot of great players over in the Eredivisie. Is he going to put all that down to go to a completely new environment in his executive career, at least? I don't know. I don't know that he has quite the same drive to go home and help out MLS the way that other players like him have, because the Netherlands is home to him as well. So I think it's a great sign that Philly are even in the game for him. If they can even turn his head a bit, that'll be, to me, that's noteworthy. But I think the big pitch for them is to show that, look, we've cleaned up our executive structure. We're ready to cast aside this sort of dogged reputation for underachievement and failure and dysfunction, because let's be honest, that's too much of that has sort of tainted everything Philadelphia does. But they really do, as I got to learn last month in an in-depth piece about their youth system, they have a really innovative, groundbreaking, progressive youth structure that has not really been fully connected to the senior team. I think Ernie Stewart would be a great candidate to link those things up, to really turn it into a homegrown focus club, making their own talent, bringing it up into the senior team, and eventually selling on top players. So we'll have to wait and see if he's lured to make that move. But if he does, what a huge feather in the cap for Philly. A real reason for optimism if they can get him.
Yeah, it seems like a very tough sell to get a guy like Ernie Stewart over, but we'll see. It's out there. It's at least it shows that there is some real ambition on the part of the club to get somebody in who knows what they're doing. To the fans who have long been worried about the direction, Nick Sakiewicz being ousted as the man in charge is a step in the right direction for a lot of people, but we'll see what the next move is. All right. Let's turn now, Charlie. We've talked some MLS, a little bit of Philadelphia and their situation. I want to talk about the youth teams in the U.S. Soccer program. You've got a story up on Hugo Perez, and I'll admit that I haven't yet gotten through all of it. But about his influence on this team of U17s that are currently in Chile at the World Cup under Richie Williams. For anybody who doesn't know exactly, well, we don't know what happened, but what's the story with Hugo Perez and his relationship with U.S. Soccer at this point?
Yeah. So sorry, I've got my youth development project here is busting at me.
Hey,
So,
that's the important. That's
noise.
very important.
But no, Hugo Perez is a former U.S. international, born in El Salvador, spent most of his life in the U.S., was a member of the '94 World Cup team, and made a very fluid transition into coaching. He spent 7 years with the federation. He worked as the U14 and U15 national team coach, and played a really influential role in grooming this current crop of U17s, who are some of the more talented kids that have come through the system in a while. And we can say that about a lot of the youth national teams, but in Perez's case, he was able to get them playing a quality of soccer that we're just not necessarily used to seeing from young American teams. Yeah. He stressed possession. He built them really from the foundation up into an effective team in terms of passing, possession, movements, team shape. There was real promise for this and real optimism about this crop as it rose through the system. But a little over a year ago, he was just sort of mysteriously and summarily reassigned, taken off that national team coaching role, and given a sort of what I consider to be a sort of a gardening leave type position, to use the English phrase, where he was made, I think it was a term like technical advisor for the Northwest Division of the Development Academy, something like that. So, and there was no explanation. I talked to many people. There's a lot of rumors, there's a lot of hearsay and uncertainty about what happened with Hugo, and no one seems to know what happened. Did he antagonize his superiors in the coaching structure? Did he have a fallout with other coaches? I heard rumors about disagreements over specific players. There's even the allegation that he ruffled feathers by selecting too many Latino players, which is certainly a disquieting thing to even consider, that such a thing would result in what happened to him. But he just got he finished out the last year of his contract very quietly, and is now trying to get a job at the senior level. He was very close to joining the coaching staff of El Salvador's national team. Now apparently he may be on the radar for LAFC in some kind of coaching role with them. But while we watch his U17s, or the kids who are now U17s in the World Cup this summer, or this month, excuse me. For me, it's just another story of what might have been, because he had this team playing at a level that, quite frankly, Richie Williams, their current coach, has not got them back to. And it's so easy for us to when we see national teams in youth events like this struggle, we just say, oh, these kids aren't good enough. The Americans still aren't good enough. Our system doesn't produce enough talent. What can we do? And I don't think that's really the case here. I think these kids are good enough, and they are good enough to not only compete, but to excel at a high level of play. And this is where I think it's a good opportunity to ask, what's wrong with our coaching? We always talk about what's wrong with our players, and I think right now this is an example of what's wrong with our coaching. Richie Williams is it's time, I think, for us to look very carefully at his position, his role. He's been in the U17 role a long time. He supervises the Bradenton residency program. He oversaw the last cycle. The U17s failed to even reach the World Cup for the first time ever. And now he said some things that almost give the impression that simply reaching the World Cup is seen as good enough. I hope that's not the case. I hope that we all are paying more attention than ever to these sort of this level. If you're unsatisfied with the senior and men's national team, pay more attention to the youth level. Let's ask some tough questions. Let's have some discussions about what we're doing right and what we're not doing right when it comes to player development. And I think our coaches have more to prove right now than our players do.
Okay. Well, take stock of the U17 run right now. Losers to Nigeria in the opening match, 2-0. A draw with Croatia last night. I've taken blame for this, Charlie, because they were up 2-0 at halftime. I turned the game on at halftime. They give up 2 goals and draw 2-2. So it's totally on me. But what was the deficiency over these two games? Because, look, the Nigerians appear to be very good. They thrashed Chile yesterday. Croatians are good, Well, why the variance in play?
Yeah, it was a great start. They soaked up a bit of possession and a bit of pressure on the part of the Croatians, and struck for two well-crafted goals. Christian Pulisic, sort of one of the latest hype trains that is boarding right now. He's a very talented playmaker, very good going forward. Is in the Borussia Dortmund system right now. Could possibly be a special kid. They go in with a 2-0 halftime lead. And they're going to have to soak up a bit of pressure after the break, but it was an 18-1 shots contrast in the second half. They dropped deeper and deeper. They were more and more passive, and eventually they paid for it. They gave up first one goal and then another, and then were hanging on for dear life at the end. I think Croatia hit the woodwork once or twice in the final minutes. It was just a real sort of capitulation, and this team is still alive. There are third place finishing slots, in which you can advance. They need a result against Chile, who just happen to be the home nation here. But on Friday, if they win over Chile, they can probably still advance. But and that would be an achievement. Again, this is a really rugged group with a European power, the host nation, who's a strong program, and the defending champions. But I'm more interested in the performances, and right now the performances don't suggest a team that has a clear plan. They suggest there's issues with leadership and tactical savvy in terms of controlling the game. And one of the things that Hugo Perez talked about is playing defense with the ball. Right, this is an idea that I wish we'd get a little more comfortable with our national teams here in the U.S. Possession can be useful in many ways. And this team doesn't seem to necessarily have either they're not set up or they're not able to control the flow of matches in big settings like this. And it has to be said too, Williams has played a couple kids out of position. He's made a few head scratching lineup decisions where it's not clear that the best 11 players are on the field in their best roles. So questions to ask there as well.
I like the quote you have at the top of your piece at soccerwire.com. People should go read this on Hugo Perez. The most important thing is the ball. When you have it, you can do so many things. When you don't have it, you can only do one. You have to go chase it. I don't want that. I like that. Obviously, that's what you're talking about there. Very briefly, Charlie, before I let you go, what you said there, and again, rumors, speculation, nothing concrete, just the whispers that come with these behind-the-scenes machinations. The idea that Hugo Perez may have alienated some people because he picked too many Latino kids. Again, as you said, very disquieting, very distressing, but it speaks to the larger problem that is the politics of soccer. And whenever I get somebody who has this very simple notion of how to fix our youth development system, let's do this thing, let's do that thing, small-sided games, more work with the ball, less don't keep score at lower level. I want to scream, you're not considering the politics.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of great ideas in the system. There's a lot of great ideas that could be added to the system. But a lot of it comes down to who is executing policy, who's drawing up the policy. And I think Jurgen Klinsmann has the potential to do great things as a technical director. He understands the system both as a coach, as an ex-player, as a parent, whose kids have gone through the U.S. youth system. However, I think my biggest criticism of him so far as a technical director specifically is there's a very strong sense of a coaching fraternity within the federation. Certain types of people get the jobs, and they tend to stay in the jobs. The federation, again, has a lot of good ideas, a lot of good people working for it, but it operates in sort of a top-down fashion. It's a planned economy, as I say, something akin to Soviet-era Russia in a lot of ways in terms of things originating at the top and being pushed down. That can work. The German example shows us that there are definitely things you can do at an organizational level, at a federation level, that can be very effective. But if the implementation is handled by the same people who were unable to implement previous strategies, then you're probably not going to have significant changes in the way things go. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that there's necessarily open competition and a consequence environment of consequences for performances in terms of the youth national team coaching. And this goes for men and women, by the way. There was a really stinging failure in the U20 Women's World Cup. I believe it was last year, maybe it was back in 13, where Michelle French, the coach, had really there were no consequences for what most people would say was drastic underachievement, even failure. So this is a cultural issue, I think, an organizational cultural issue, and it's going to be hard for someone like Klinsmann to really make the sweeping change that is being demanded of him if he's using the same personnel that have been in charge for years.
Charlie Boehm, go read this piece on Hugo Perez and the youth, the young team at Chile U17 World Cup right now on SoccerWire.com. You can also find him on MLSsoccer.com and USSoccerPlayers.com. Follow him on Twitter, CBOEHM. I don't think Baby Boehm has a Twitter account yet, but we'll let you know as soon as she does. Charlie, thank you very much for the time as always. Excellent stuff. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
There goes Charlie Boehm. Always fun to talk to Charlie. Charlie, one of the best soccer people I know. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com. When we come back, your phone calls on a Wednesday. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. During the past few months, we've created a new weekend tradition which includes watching your favorite MLS team play on TV, muting the broadcast, heading over to Rabble.tv to hear my audio during the game, and then drinking a cold beverage as we spend 90 minutes together discussing our favorite league. For this Sunday, I'd like to personally invite you to join me and Jared Dubois as we bring you the final day of the MLS regular season. From 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern, Jared and I will be talking through the DC United against Columbus Crew finale, but we'll also be keeping a close eye on all of the other games, where we'll be updating you on the key developments as they happen. With Rabble, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the DC United against Crew game on TV, press the mute button, and head on over to Rabble.tv to listen to me and Jared on your desktop, through your iOS, Android app, or through your mobile browser. Plus, before and during the games, you can join in by posting your questions or observations in the comments section. Well, why don't you create your own broadcast, call one of your team's games? It's easy. Sign up for free today and try it out. Join me and Jared this Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern at Rabble.tv, where it's your team and your call.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we are back on Soccer Morning, Wednesday edition of the show. Back to the Future Day. Back to the Future 2, whatever. It's the future of Back to the Future 2. We have reached that moment in time, which is where Marty McFly had to go to change the future so that Biff didn't become a gambling billionaire who ran Hill Valley. And what else happened in that movie? A lot of things happened in that movie. You had old Biff. You had old Biff giving the almanac to young Biff. Then you had, obviously, Marty's kids and Michael J. Fox in drag. You had that thing happening in that movie. You obviously had the hoverboard, which is what everybody wants to focus on. You had self-lacing shoes. No soccer mentions, clearly, in Back to the Future. So there's not an easy tie-in. I do have an idea, or actually have a suggestion from Robert in California as to how we can tie in Back to the Future with soccer. But we do have the phone lines open, 646-832-3909. Whatever's on your mind today, whether it's Decision Day, the U17s at the World Cup, the Champions League, what Arsenal did against Bayern Munich yesterday, how big of a deal is that for Arsenal? I mean, clearly they weren't expected to win. Clearly, Bayern Munich came in as a favorite at the Emirates. I mean, that right there says a lot about Arsenal and where Arsenal sits and where Bayern Munich sits in the European hierarchy. When you have a team that's at home and is the size of Arsenal and is an out-and-out underdog, I mean, that's very interesting. Take your phone calls on, how about this question from Robert? I like this. If you had the DeLorean and you could change anything from the soccer past, what do you change? Do you change the hand of God? Maybe you're English. Maybe it's the hand of God. If you're American, I can't think of a bigger moment to go back and have some sort of influence on than Frank's handball. So I don't know how you do this. I mean, let's think this through, because just because you have the DeLorean doesn't mean you're going to change history. I mean, how do you even impact that game in South Korea between the USA and Germany to prevent Frings from keeping that ball from going in the back of the net? I don't know how you do that. You can. That's the thing, is changing the future requires involving yourself in the past. And if you're Marty McFly, or if you're yourself for that matter, what do you do? Bill in New York. Bill, before you get into anything else, what would you change in the past if you had the DeLorean?
Oh man, you got me on a tough one there. The Red Bulls would have won a championship by now.
Okay, well, I mean, let's imagine you have the ability to change one moment to maybe make that happen. What do you change? You're changing something that happened in what? In that was it the 08 final, the 09 final, whatever that was, or are you going back? You going back even further than that?
It would be one of the DC losses before that. Lose to DC.
Yeah,
knocking them out.
So maybe I mean the problem is you almost have to commit a crime to make sure that it doesn't happen, because you can't change the way those calls are made. Speaking of Ernie Stewart, Anyway, go ahead, Bill. You want to talk about your Red Bulls?
Yeah, well, I was actually calling about the power of soccer morning.
Okay.
You and Mark talk about changing the schedule, and what happens? The next day, it's changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the league sort of woke up to that realization for a couple of different reasons. I'm not going to take credit. Well, you know what? Screw it, Bill. We're taking credit right here. It's all soccer morning. It's all us. We did it. 100%.
Credit.
And the power of Mark Fishkin, clearly.
And I'll tell you, I like the schedule the way it is with the 5 and 5, the East and West. But I understand why they had to change that. When the Supporters Shield is in that close of a race between two different conferences, you got to play them at the same time. I like it. But I'm one of those old guys who I believe multitasking is no tasking. I can't watch all these games at once. I don't know how you guys do it, but you're watching 4 games at once.
No. My credo, my wisdom on this, Bill, has always been if you're watching 2 games, you're watching 0 games. And
that's how I feel too.
And look, I at the same time, I recognize why this could be fun and why this is. I mean, I don't think we're going to get Tim Burke from Deadspin working the multiple feeds on the final day of the MLS regular season the way he did on the Premier League season a couple years back when City won on the final day. But if somebody does some of that and can put together that simultaneous, I mean, you have to have some drama. Obviously there needs to be something in play here. But if you could get something that's sort of a simultaneous recap of what was happening in each place at any given time, I mean, that's fun. I think competitively outweighs any issues of viewership, Bill, unfortunately.
Now I have to put you on the spot here. What would be really great is if you could move that Rabble back to 7 o'clock and do the Red Bulls game at the same time.
I would Bill, I would love to. I really would. The problem is that family and real life gets in the way of that. I really would love to be able to do, this is, I think we established that we were going to do a 5 o'clock game before they moved the Red Bulls match. So I would love to be on the air talking about which game's on national television. Well, I don't remember.
7?
Yeah, I think it's the LA game, right?
I don't even know. I know I'm going to be watching Red Bulls, so it doesn't make a difference.
Okay, yeah, of course. I mean, you got your team to worry about. I think it's ESPN3, ESPN3, TSN2, FS1, Sporting Kansas City, and
It's
LA
gonna be the LA
Galaxy.
game?
Yeah, it's the LA game. So we would still have to monitor FC Dallas and San Jose and Red Bull Chicago through other means. So I mean, it would be fun. It would be fun. We can't do it based on some family stuff I got going on.
Now, I wanted to say something about your Best Soccer Show. I never call in Best Soccer Show because family gets in the way for me at nighttime. But your bonus show last week was great.
Appreciate
Hearing
that.
you guys talk about the beginnings and everything else was excellent. When you brought up Champion Soccer Network, I remember thinking how great that was and all the different things they had.
Yeah.
And I thought it was great. And I really wanted to call you guys Monday and say something to the both of you. But that was a great show.
I appreciate it, Bill. That's good stuff. Yeah, if you missed, thanks for the call, Bill. I'm gonna let you go. If you missed the Best Soccer Show, we weren't able to do one this week. So this is last week's Best Soccer Show, and then we did a bonus show. It's like 35 minutes on the origins of the Best Soccer Show. If you're a Best Soccer Show fan, I highly suggest you go listen to it. It was fun to talk about that stuff. I mean, the memory gets real fuzzy. And to be honest with you, doing this show daily, I can barely remember what guests we had on last week. I can hardly remember, what I talked about yesterday, much less what happened 4 years ago. But we managed to scrape up some of those memories, go back. Speaking of Back to the Future, and look into the past and recall the beginnings of the Best Soccer Show, which obviously fed into this. Without the Best Soccer Show, there is no Soccer Morning. That's a pretty direct line. I mean, the Best Soccer Show started as an outgrowth of a previous show that, and then Trevor said, "Hey, come do your show for my new thing," which was NASN, is now Backheel. And the rest is sort of history. Well, we're still doing it, but, there's some history. All right. So we got that question out there from Robert. What would you change? If you had the DeLorean, you had the ability to go back in time, you could change something. Now, I would like to hear what your practical plan is, because I think that's half the fun. You could go back in time, get to South Korea somehow. First of all, you'd have to take your DeLorean to South Korea, or you'd have to travel back to 2002 and then travel to South Korea, because, you don't change location, you just change time. Or you don't travel through physical space, you only travel through time. So you're going back to 2002, and you're changing what? Torsten Spring's handball, or you're changing the call, or you're changing what exactly? A couple of moments, big moments in that match, turn that match. But how are you going to have an influence on the game? This is just the way my brain works. I know this is like taking out some of the fun. Again, Robert's got some good suggestions. Hand of God, Escobar's own goal. I mean, knowing the aftermath of that, knowing what happened with Andres Escobar after he went back to Colombia, after scoring the own goal against the United States in 1994, hey, I'd change it. I mean, it might change. That might have a big impact. Wow, what a question. Would you change that moment if you had the ability to change that moment? Because that fed into the United States obviously building some momentum, going to MLS with some excitement, and now we're here 20 years later. 22 years later. What if Andre Escobar's goal doesn't go in? That own goal doesn't happen. He might still be alive. Maybe not. I mean, Colombia was a very violent place anyway. Maybe Andres Escobar is still in the crosshairs of somebody then. MLS Boot Room says, is today going to be tweet every photo relating to Back to the Future Day? Yes, it is, as a matter of fact. Now, I don't actually I'm not the one tweeting those pictures, but I fully endorse every tweet that we put out today, including some reference to Back to the Future. Do you not like Back to the Future? Are you a curmudgeon? Did you not enjoy the 80s? Eddie in Brooklyn. What's going on, man?
That was quick. All right. So I would get in the DeLorean. I'd go to July of 2014 in Rio.
Okay.
I would be in the stadium where Costa Rica is playing Netherlands.
Uh-huh.
And while Tim Krul is being subbed on and he's walking towards towards his goal before the penalty kicks, I would run onto the field and I would knock him out. Like, just straight knock him out.
Okay. Okay, now, look, I'm with you. I understand. Tim Krul, penalties, Costa Rica World Cup. I get it. I get all of that, Eddie. I'm with you. As you know, I can empathize with your decision here. Now, you're actually getting arrested. First of all, now what do you do to get yourself out and back to the future?
All right, Jason, I have a time machine, and you're worried about me getting out of a jail.
Well, I'm just saying you had to leave the DeLorean somewhere. It's got to be parked.
Well, yeah, but I got that crazy old white dude with me. I'm pretty sure he could figure something out.
I like it. I like it a lot. That's really good. All right, so Costa Rica, that moment in the World Cup. Considering the way, considering how close those margins were for the Ticos, I can totally see that. I mean, we're talking about the difference between. I mean, it was a great run, right? And you guys will always have that. But we're talking about the difference between something maybe transformative, something bigger than just wow. We beat we beat these teams. We beat Italy. We go into the what were the quarterfinals, right?
Oh, yeah, that was the quarters.
Yeah. So getting through the quarters to the semis would be pretty amazing for a country like Costa Rica and potentially, again, a game changer. Eddie, you got anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to knock out Tim Krul.
Eddie in Brooklyn. He's going to go knock out Tim Krul. Good stuff. Thanks for calling, Eddie. Appreciate it, man. 646-832-3909. Rob Rice. He would somehow keep Stuart Holden from playing Manchester United in 2011. It's a good one. What might have been. Yeah. 646-832-3909. I think what would I do? It's a very good question. I mean, we're talking about one moment, right? We're talking about changing events on one day. So I can't say something like go back and save the NASL so we don't have the league dying and then have to start over with MLS in 1996. I can't do that. Or even further back and go to the ASL days and figure out a way to keep those leagues from fighting so they don't cannibalize each other. Trevor's going to bring us down here. He'd send Charlie Davies home earlier than I. Put Charlie Davies in a cab. That's one you can actually probably have an impact on as a regular person. Like, Eddie wants to go onto the field and knock out Tim Krul. That seems a little impractical to me. But if you showed up at that event with where Charlie Davies was in October of 2009 and grabbed the dude and stuck him in a cab, that's a good one. I mean, it's as Trevor says, it's sad, but it's a good one. American soccer moments, the Frings handball, Charlie Davies. Give me something else. I mean, give me the somehow changing that Ghana game in 2010 would be fun. I don't know. Can we not have Ricardo Clark on the field? Convince maybe you find out a way to give Ricardo Clark a bit of indigestion or some vomiting the night before the game against Ghana. Maybe that's what you do. I mean, look, maybe somebody else makes that same mistake. Maybe it's not. If it's not Ricardo Clark, maybe it's somebody else. But there's got to be some way to change that outcome. Aaron in Jersey, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing? So mine isn't quite as exciting as knocking out Tim Krul or something like that. But when Sunil Gulati was nominated, I would make sure when he was taking his taxi cab that I drove him the wrong way around New York, and that he was late, and that he wouldn't have been able to.
Can't stand for election.
Gone to the committee meeting.
Interesting.
Exactly.
You believe that Sunil Gulati has ultimately been bad for American soccer then?
I mean, I look at him as being a caretaker for a moment, because you need those at times, who has turned into a, transformational figure after, 10, 15 plus years. And I think that's the problem, is that, at a certain point you need professionals. And when I say professionals, not necessarily players only, but people who are professionals at running national organizations in football, especially one of our size. And we just, someone like him, after this long, has institutionalized so much. And I look at the great interview you did earlier with Chris Boehm, and
Charlie.
his article is awesome because it speaks exactly to what's wrong, which is you have this kind of institutional political culture, which is really the thing you have to go after, right? It's not just, running around, let's have 10,000 futsal courts and something great happens. It's, you've got to dislodge all these kind of, institutional, blockage in the arteries. And people like him and thousands of others, are really just not the healthy, competitive people you need.
It's interesting, Aaron, though, that you're taking, and of course, look, we're asking a very specific scenario. You have a time machine, you could change one thing, but that's sort of a reactive approach rather than a proactive approach, right? So you're saying, well, I'd go back and make sure Sunil Gulati doesn't get to the meeting that elects him U.S. Soccer president, but you're, instead of saying something like, I would go grab this person who I believe would be a better president, and I would make sure he got elected somehow.
Well, what I'm throwing up for concept is that we might get someone worse, but they would probably be thrown out faster, or we have probably a decent chance of getting someone a little better.
Okay, I see.
Then that person doesn't have a career objective of running U.S. soccer for 15, 20, 30, 50,000 years. And basically, you wind up getting natural turnover in the system. And we've had neither in the last, 10, 20 years. And I don't presuppose to know who the right person was to run this. I just know institutional people, top to bottom, aren't good for any organization. And when Chris earlier talked about the, this is like Soviet planning. I mean, he nailed it so well. I mean, I've coached and been part of this system for decades, and it's just brutal. Once you get to the eval and to the regional committee level, you're dead. I mean, if you aren't part of that clique, you're gone. I mean, you have no chance. You're not sitting there being evaluated on anything technical or anything tactical. It's all an insider kind of club, and that's for men's and women's. And it's actually something that'd be great if it's boring as hell, but if you could maybe one time focus a little more on that, because it's very interesting. There's so many great coaches that are just never get a chance to kind of grow up in this system.
Yeah, I know. I have no doubt. And as wading into that stuff, Aaron, can be a very difficult balancing act around these parts. And as you may take a lot out of it, and there may be a lot of people who would. But the question is, is that really where we should be spending our time?
No, that's fair. I mean, it's totally fair to. I'm not suggesting you spend 2 weeks.
No, sure.
Yeah, you'd have 3 people listening. But I guess what I'm saying is, once in a while, like that great article, I think was a great example of that, where people can start to understand, because I fall into that. It's just so easy. Hey, let's just push the reset button, fix things, and it's like if it was that simple, then the Department of Transportation in the United States would work too, right? I mean, it isn't fixing things that way. It's the politics of it, and I think that's where we struggle. That's why we love club football so much. So the thing I really want to talk about positive today is PSG Real Madrid. I think that's just an epic matchup today. And anyone who has that couple hours in the afternoon or can record it, I think is in for a treat. I mean, it's the Champions quarterfinal matchup that we're getting for free in October.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It occurred to me just now as you were talking about that game, Aaron, that I have my kids' parent-teacher conference probably just as the second half begins. So that's fun.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah, that's really bad.
And hopefully you can get, in 10, 15 more years, my kids are, my youngest is a senior in high school. So, whatever she does at 4 at soccer is not my problem anymore. And so I get to watch the match.
There you go. Aaron, I appreciate it. Good chat as always, man. I appreciate the phone calls. There goes
Thank you. Great job.
Aaron in New Jersey. Aaron's identifying a big picture item. Again, he's He says go back and make sure Sino Galati doesn't win. Again, I don't know that I'm pinning everything on Sino Galati in that in the same way that Aaron is. And for him, it's more of an institutional thing. But I do think that there are moments in the way American soccer's story has unfolded that are much more unsexy than Torsten Frings handball or the giveaway against Ghana or any other moment on the field. There are things within our history, our past, maybe even within our recent past, that have affected the way this program, this country, our culture has developed. And again, you wonder, what if? What if that one moment? I mean, Marty McFly goes back to 1955 to make sure his parents get together. Otherwise, he doesn't exist. What if you were able to go back to 1984, 1983, 1982, find a way to convince those NASL owners that there was a better path, that what they were doing in terms of spending, expansion, wasn't going to sustain, that league was going to fold, figure out a way to keep them solvent so that they could continue on into a future and continue the growth that NASL has started. I mean, I don't know where we are in 2015 if the NASL hadn't died. Man, isn't that fun to think about? Isn't that fun to think about? Or maybe it's depressing. Either one. 646-832-3909. We've got a couple of things happening down in Miami. But David Beckham's talking up his getting closer and closer to getting that stadium site solidified. There may be, I'm not sure where the money's coming from and the politics of all of that. I'm not going to get into that. The other story down in Miami is that he is courting Tim Leiweke, former CEO of AEG, owners of the LA Galaxy, former president, the guy in charge at in Toronto with that group, which I'm blanking on the name of the group, MLSE, a guy who obviously has a reputation in American soccer of being a major transformative driving force, the guy who essentially made David Beckham to LA Galaxy happen, a guy who started a program in Toronto that has now led to their first playoff berth and getting Sebastian Giovinco and Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore. He would be a massive get for David Beckham in Miami. Massive. Now, Curtis Larson up in Toronto, writer for the Toronto Sun, says that what he knows is that Leiweke is considering his options and that Miami is certainly one of them. But if this is coming, do not doubt the Miami project anymore. Don't. I am as skeptical as anybody when it comes to David Beckham and what he's trying to do in Miami. I think that there is a question of a political motivation. There's a question of where that stadium's going to go. There's a question just getting through all that red tape. There is going to be a question of motivating a populace to come out and support soccer. But if Tim Leiweke's involved, most of those questions go out the window, because that man has never failed in his task to make soccer take a next step wherever he's been. And he's had two success. I mean, maybe it's a small sample size for you, but again, this MLS is almost entirely a creation of Tim Leiweke. Almost completely. The Board of Governors had to approve the plan, but the LA Galaxy had to make it happen. And Tim Leiweke was the guy that did that. Robert on Twitter, as much as I want to change Zusi's goal versus Panama in order to keep Mexico out of the World Cup in 2014, I pick Frings handball because the U.S. goes on to beat South Korea, Brazil, and win the World Cup in 2002. I don't know about beating Brazil, but they could have, and South Korea at home. I mean, there's some cooking, right? There's some home cooking happening there. That's good stuff, though. All right. Phone calls are not happening, and you guys are taking it easy on a Wednesday. That's fine. It's Back to the Future today. I'm sure you're out celebrating right now, right? We will wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning. Thank you very much to Charlie Boehm, who joined us on short notice, brought Baby Bone to the table. She added her own contributions, probably more intelligent than a lot of things I say. Go follow us on Twitter at Soccer Morning. We've got the Rabble TV event Decision Day, 5 o'clock Eastern. Myself and Jared Dubois will be talking through DC United and Columbus Crew, in addition to tracking the other Eastern Conference games happening at that time, as we look to see what the ultimate fallout will be in the East. New England Revolution expected to get in, but it's a matter of seeding there as well. So Decision Day coming up. We'll be on Rabble.tv. Look for that. Anything else, Trev? Have we gotten our Mosque un Pod t-shirt done? By the way, well, I'll tell you something off the air. Mosque un Pod, whatever. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow, Thursday. Oh, RSL made it into the Champions League quarterfinal, so all four MLS teams are in. Vancouver didn't make it. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Bye.
Did my invitations disappear?